Nah. The night my sister stood up at my college graduation dinner and announced she was pregnant by my boyfriend, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I set down my fork, folded my napkin, and said, "Congratulations." Then I excused myself to use the restroom, sat on the cold tile floor for 4 minutes, and made a decision that would change everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, because you need to understand what kind of family I came from before you can understand what I did. I'm the oldest of 2 daughters. My sister, who I'll call my younger sister, is 3 years behind me. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the one who got good grades, worked part-time through high school, never gave my parents a reason to worry. My younger sister was the opposite. She was loud, impulsive, and beautiful in the way that made adults forgive her for everything. She broke curfew and my mother called it spirited. She failed 2 classes junior year and my father said she just needed the right environment. I graduated top of my class and my parents said, "We knew you'd be fine." That was always the dynamic. I would be fine. She needed the help. I got a partial scholarship to a state university 3 hours away. My parents helped my younger sister pay for a private art school in the same city where we grew up, even though she had dropped out of 2 community college courses already. When I asked why she got more financial support, my mother said, "You're stronger, honey. You don't need it the same way she does." I filed that away somewhere deep and kept moving. During my sophomore year, I met someone through a mutual friend at an off-campus gathering. He was funny and easy to talk to, and we started dating about 2 months later. Long distance is hard, but we made it work. He drove to see me on weekends. I came home for holidays. My younger sister met him at Thanksgiving of my junior year, and I remember watching her lean across the table and say, "I can see why my sister likes you," in a tone that I told myself was just her being flirty the way she was flirty with everyone. I told myself that a lot over the following year. By the time I was finishing my senior year, we had been together for almost 2 years. I had a job offer lined up in my field. I was 22 years old, and for the first time in my life, things felt like they were falling into place. My parents had planned a graduation dinner at a nice restaurant downtown, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a pre-exé menu. My mother had made the reservation months in advance. My father had taken the day off work. My younger sister had driven in from the city. Everything felt warm and full that night. I remember thinking, sitting at that table, that maybe I had been too hard on my family in my head. Maybe we were going to be okay. Then my younger sister tapped her water glass with her knife. She was glowing. I noticed that before she even opened her mouth. She had that particular kind of glow, and I had seen enough of her performances to know something was coming. She said she had an announcement. She said she'd been waiting for the right moment. She looked at my boyfriend across the table and said, "I think now is the right time, don't you?" He didn't look at me. That's the detail I keep coming back to. He looked at the tablecloth. She told my parents she was pregnant. She told them the father was my boyfriend. She said they had been seeing each other for 6 months. She said she was sorry, but she also didn't look sorry. She looked like someone who had just placed a winning hand on the table. My mother made a sound I had never heard her make before. My father stood up halfway and then sat back down. And my boyfriend, still not looking at me, said, "I was going to tell you, I just didn't know how." 6 months. We had still been together 6 months ago. I had driven home for his birthday 6 months ago. I had spent money I didn't have on a gift for him 6 months ago. I excused myself. I went to the restroom. I sat on the floor and I breathed. 4 minutes. Then I stood up, washed my hands, and went back to the table. My mother was holding my younger sister's hand. My father was talking quietly to my boyfriend with the expression he used when he was trying to fix something. Nobody had texted me. Nobody had come to check on me. When I sat back down, my mother looked at me and said, "I hope you understand this is hard for her too." I picked up my fork. I finished my meal. I said almost nothing for the rest of the dinner. On the drive home, my mother told me I was being cold. My father said I needed to think about what was best for the family now. My younger sister sat in the back seat next to me and said she hoped we could eventually be okay, in the same voice she used when she wanted something. I moved into my new city 2 weeks later for my job. I told everyone I was busy with the transition. I didn't call. I let texts go unanswered for a day. then 2, then longer. Here is what nobody in my family knew. I had been co-signing on my younger sister's apartment lease for the past year. She had asked me 8 months before the dinner, when she was between jobs and her credit was poor. I had said yes, because she was family, and because my mother had asked me to, and because I was, as my mother always said, the strong one. My name was on that lease. What nobody also knew was that 6 months earlier, right around the time it turned out, that my younger sister and my boyfriend had started their relationship. My parents had asked me to help set up a savings account structure for my younger sister's future. They weren't good with certain kinds of financial paperwork. I had helped them open it. I was listed as an authorized party. I had been meaning to remove myself from both of those things for months. I kept forgetting, or telling myself I'd get around to it, or deciding it wasn't urgent. After graduation dinner, I stopped forgetting. I did not do anything immediately. This is important. I spent 3 weeks at my new job, learning my role, setting up my apartment, building my life. I let my family think I was slowly coming around. My mother sent me articles about forgiveness. My younger sister texted me twice about baby names. I responded to one of them with a single emoji so they would know I had seen it. I called a tenant rights attorney in my younger sister's city. I explained that I was a co-signer on a lease and I needed to understand my options. The attorney explained that in that state, a co-signer could petition to be released from a lease under certain conditions and that the landlord had to be notified. The process wasn't instant, but it was possible. More importantly, she explained what happened to a lease when a co-signer initiated that process without a replacement co-signer lined up. The tenant would be notified and would need to either find a new co-signer or potentially face renegotiation of the lease terms, which in a tight rental market could mean a significant rent increase or the landlord choosing not to renew. I thanked her, paid the consultation fee, and filed the paperwork the following Monday morning. The savings account was simpler. As an authorized party, I could not withdraw funds. That protection was built in, but I could flag a discrepancy for review, which would trigger a hold while the bank investigated. The discrepancy I flagged was real. My parents had originally told me the account was for my younger sister's education, but she had withdrawn a significant amount several months ago for what turned out to be a vacation. I had the records because I had helped set up the alerts. I submitted the documentation to the bank's compliance review department and let the process begin. I also called my own cell phone provider and removed my younger sister from my family plan, which she had been on for 2 years. I mailed her a letter, physical mail, no text, no email, informing her that the plan would end in 30 days, giving her the required notice. Then I waited. It took 11 days. My mother called first. It was a Tuesday morning at 7:15, which meant she had been up for a while, working herself up to it. She asked me if I knew anything about my younger sister's apartment situation. I said I had been dealing with some administrative things, and I would look into it. My mother's voice got tight. She asked me if I had done something to the lease on purpose. I said very calmly, I removed myself from a financial obligation I never should have been in. The landlord has the paperwork. She told me I was being vindictive. I told her I was being responsible. My father called an hour later. He used his problem-solving voice, the one he had used at the graduation dinner when he was talking to my boyfriend instead of checking on me. He said the family needed to come together right now, that my younger sister was pregnant and stressed and this was not the time. I asked him very genuinely when he thought the right time would be for me to address the fact that my younger sister had been sleeping with my boyfriend for 6 months while I was still with him, and that the announcement had been made at a dinner celebrating my graduation, and that no one at that table had come to check on me when I left the room. He didn't have an answer for that. He said, "That's not what this call is about." I told him I loved him and that I would talk to him when he was ready to have the other conversation too. Then I hung up. My younger sister called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was long and tearful and went through several different tones. First hurt, then angry, then apologetic, then back to hurt. She said she knew what she had done was wrong. She said she had feelings she couldn't control. She said the baby was real and her situation was real and she needed family right now. She said she hoped I understood that she had always struggled more than me, that things had always been harder for her, that I had always had it more together. I listened to the voicemail once. Then I saved it to a folder on my phone. My ex-boyfriend did not call. That told me something about him that I hadn't fully let myself know before. The bank hold resolved about 3 weeks later. The The funds were released back to my younger sister with a notation, but the process had taken long enough that she had missed a payment on something, which created a downstream effect I hadn't specifically engineered, but did not feel badly about. The lease situation took longer. Her landlord, it turned out, was not unhappy to have a reason to renegotiate because property values in that area had gone up. My younger sister had to find a new cosigner or accept a higher rent. My parents eventually co-signed for her themselves, which is what I had quietly expected would happen. They were capable of it. They had just never been asked before because it had always been easier to ask me. That was the part that sat with me the most, honestly. Not the drama, not the confrontation, just that quiet realization they had always given the weight to me because I would carry it. Not because I needed to. Not because I would fare. Just because I would. My mother didn't speak to me for 6 weeks. My father texted occasionally, short, careful messages that didn't mention any of it. My younger sister sent me a photo of her ultrasound at some point. I didn't respond to that one. Around the 3-month mark, my mother called again. This time her voice was different. Quieter. She asked if she could come visit me in my city for a weekend. I said yes. She came on a Friday and we walked around my neighborhood and I made dinner at my apartment and we talked for a long time. Not about what had happened. Not at first. Just about my job and my life and what I was building. On Saturday morning, she sat across from me at my kitchen table with her coffee and she said, I think I made things too easy for her for too long. I didn't say anything. I just let it be there, she said, and too hard for you. I said, I know you love us both. She said, I know you love us both. She said, I do. But I didn't always show it the same way, and I'm not sure I can undo that. That was not an apology exactly, but it was the most honest thing she had said to me in 20-something years. I refilled her coffee. We went for a walk. I didn't tell her it was okay because it wasn't entirely, but I also didn't close the door. My father came around more slowly, the way men in his generation often do with this kind of thing. He needed to see that I wasn't cutting the family off, that I was still there, before he could open up any space to examine his own role. That's a longer story. We're working on it. My younger sister had her baby in early spring. I sent a gift. Not out of obligation, not because anyone asked me to, but because the baby hadn't done anything, and because I am capable of separating what I feel about a situation from what an infant deserves. I did not go to the hospital. I did not pretend that she and I were fine. We are not fine. We may not be fine for a long time, and I've stopped pretending that forgiveness is something I owe on anyone else's timeline. What I know now, on the other side of all of it, I spent years being the strong one, the capable one, the one who would carry weight without complaint, and I thought that was just who I was. I thought it was a personality trait. It took my graduation dinner, the night that was supposed to be mine, being turned into my sister's announcement for me to understand that strong had been a role I was assigned so others didn't have to be. I am still strong. I'm just not doing it for the same reasons anymore. The paperwork went through, the lease was settled, the phone plan ended. My life continued in the direction I had been building it before any of this happened, because I had built it on ground that belonged to me. And every morning, I wake up in my apartment in my city, with my job and my routines and my life that is genuinely mine. I think about that 4 minutes on the cold restroom floor at my graduation dinner. How I sat there and breathed and decided without quite having the words for it yet, that I was done being the one who absorbed everyone else's consequences. I stood up. I washed my hands. I went back to the table. And then, eventually, I went home. There is a version of this story where I stay silent forever, where I absorb what happened at that dinner table, file it away like I filed away every other thing, and keep carrying weight that was never fairly distributed to me. I almost lived that version. I had been practicing it my whole life. But here is what I've come to understand. The choices we make about what we will and will not carry are not small choices. They compound. Every time I said yes to co-signing, every time I handed over access, every time I stepped back so my younger sister could step forward, those weren't isolated moments of generosity. They were a pattern. And patterns, left unexamined, become the structure of your entire life. What changed for me wasn't anger. Anger I'd had plenty of and had learned to swallow. What changed was clarity. When my mother sat across from me at that dinner and said the words, "This is hard for her too," without first asking how hard it was for me, something in me stopped waiting for a fairness that was never going to arrive on its own. I had spent years believing that if I was patient enough, strong enough, capable enough, the people who loved me would eventually notice the imbalance and correct it themselves. That night taught me they wouldn't. Not because they were cruel, but because imbalance is comfortable for everyone except the person bearing it. Intelligence, I think, is knowing the difference between loyalty and self-erasure. I had confused the two for a long time. I thought being a good daughter, a good sister, meant making myself smaller so everyone else had room. But that's not love, not the kind that sustains anyone, including the person receiving it. When you carry someone else's consequences indefinitely, you don't build their strength. You confirm to them over and over that they don't need any. The decisions I made in the weeks after graduation were not revenge in the way people mean when they say that word with heat in their voice. They were corrections. I removed my name from obligations I should never have taken on. I stopped subsidizing a dynamic that had cost me for years. I did it quietly, legally, and without cruelty, because the point was never to hurt anyone. The point was to stop hurting myself. Resilience is not the ability to endure everything. That's a definition I've had to unlearn. Real resilience is knowing when endurance has become a way of avoiding the harder work of change. I endured for years. The harder thing, the thing that actually took courage, was deciding that I was allowed to stop. My life on the other side of that decision is not perfect. Families are complicated, and grief doesn't follow a clean timeline, and I still have mornings where I wonder what it would have looked like if things had gone differently. But I wake up in a life that is genuinely mine, built by my own choices on ground I actually own. And that is something no one announced at a dinner table. I built it quietly, the same way I had always done everything. Except this time, I built it for myself.